Hey there, everybody. How's it going today? Welcome back for part 4 of my Dominaria United set review for Limited and Constructed. This part is going to cover all the red cards. So we'll be going through all of them by rarity, common, uncommon, mythic, and then rare. If you haven't seen the first 3 parts, part 1 is white, part 2 is blue, part 3 is black, and you want to check those out, you can catch them in a playlist I made called Set Review, and you'll see those chapters there. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll do the commons first for red. First up is Coalition Warbrute. It's a creature, Minotaur Berserker for 3 in a red, 3/4 power and toughness. It has enlist. We haven't seen enlist since white, so we'll do a quick review for it real quick. Enlist says, as this creature attacks, you may tap a non-attacking creature you control without summoning sickness. When you do, add its power to this creature's until end of turn, and then it has trample. Kind of interesting. So we saw enlist with white, but we haven't seen it since then. So that tells me for limited that the enlist abilities are going to be featured in the Boros 2-color pair. So that's something to think about. It definitely seems natural to fit with that aggressive color pair. Still don't know how enlist is going to play out, so I'm really unsure. But this does have a kind of a beefy body, decent toughness, and has trample. It's already got 3 power, so if you enlist it, it's just going to get bigger power and be able to trample for more. So I think I'm gonna say for limited, I'm just gonna say low end on that. It's right on the borderline between low and mid. Until I see how enlist plays out when playing limited, it's gonna be hard to say. I'm going to do the same thing for low or for constructed, give it a low rating, just due to the fact that it seems to be more suited for a limited base deck than constructed. So that's what I'll give it for this rating for this card. Next up is Flowstone Infusion. It's 1 red, an instant. Target creature gets +2/-2 until end of turn. This interesting card. It's a pseudo pump spell / pseudo removal spell. You can either pump a creature, give it +2, but you'll reduce its toughness by 2, or if you just want to take out a 2 toughness creature your opponent has, go ahead and give it the plus bonus because it's going to die with the reduction in toughness. So I like it. I think it fits into a few archetypes. The white-red aggro style, also for a black-red style deck. So I could see it being used as a early game removal spell for a deck, or just to get in those final few points of damage to win the game. I'm going to give it a mid rating, probably low end on the mid level, but I think it's good enough to get a mid rating for it. For constructed, I'm going to give it a low rating. There's just better cards for 1 mana. I mean, in constructed, nothing really competes with lightning bolt. So and in standard, you got a lot of efficient one mana red removal spells, so that I would pick ahead of this. So this will do it for those two ratings for this card. Next up we have Flowstone Kavu. It's for 2 in a red, a creature, Kavu, 2/3 power and toughness. It has menace. You can pump 1 red into it to give Flowstone Kavu +1/-1 until end of turn. I like how those last 2 cards have really touched on the Flowstone theme from sets of yesterday that dealt with Dominaria or the Plane of Wrath. Pretty cool. This card's interesting. It takes the 2/3 for 3 menace creature template and slaps a Flowstone ability on it. Looking at it, you're able to get through without being blocked. You can pump it up to make it a 4/1, to do 4 points of damage to your opponent, or if they do happen to block it, you can pump it up and trade this for 2 of their creatures if you're able to. So pretty decent. I like the idea behind it. I like the evasion with Menace. So I think I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited. If I saw this card in a draft or in a sealed deck, I would look to include it in my deck. Same thing as the last card. Give it a low rating for constructed. There's just so much competition at the 3-drop spot for creatures that you know, it's hard to beat those. So this card looks like it's built more for limited play. Next up is Furious Bellow. For 1 in red, it's an instant. Target creature gets +3/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. Scry 1. So it seems like every few years they try to improve upon the first strike instant spell for red, and looks like they've upped it a notch again this time. Sure Strike was just +3/+0 and first strike, but Furious Bellow is just a touch better because it lets you scry 1, so it's pretty decent. I like it as a combat trick. Usually when you're facing a first strike creature with a surprise +3/+0, that's game over for the blocking creature that comes in contact with it, or if it's blocking an attacking creature. So I like it. I'm going to give it a mid rating. I like the aggressive instant spells we've seen so far with red, and I think this fits right in with it. Just as long as you can make sure your creature stays on the board, so when you give your creature the bonus, this spell is able to resolve. Same thing as the last few cards. I'm going to give it a low rating for constructed. There's just a lot more available at the 2 mana spot, but as I said before too, this card is built for the limited format, but pretty cool card. I like how they've upped the power level for it just a little bit. Next up is Gitu Amplifier. It's for 1 in a red. It's a creature, human wizard. Has kicker for 2 in a blue. Has power and toughness. It's a 1/2. When Gitu Amplifier enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So basically that kicker for 2 in a blue is the bounce effect. Pretty decent by itself right there. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Gitu Amplifier gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So this definitely looks like it fits in the Spells Matter deck for limited, also for constructed. I like the idea behind it. The fact that it gets bonuses for casting instants and sorceries, plus you're able to bounce your opponent's creatures. Pretty good. I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited. Yeah, I think it's pretty decent. I think it's a card you'll see played in draft quite a bit, and definitely in sealed deck. For constructed, probably I'm going to give it a mid rating with it weighted towards commander. I don't think that you'll see this much played in standard or pioneer or explorer or anything like that, but I could definitely see it being used in a commander deck. So I'll give it a mid rating for constructed. It's definitely useful. It has its uses, and it has the nice bounce effect for the kicker cost. Next up, we have Goblin Picker for 1 in a red. It's a goblin creature. 2/2 power and toughness. You can pay 1 red and tap it to discard a card to draw a card. So basically, this is a rummaging card. It looks like the only difference between this, I think it just has a little bit more power and toughness than the rummaging goblin that debuted years ago. Pretty decent card, but rummaging has always been less of an effective card filtering ability than the looting ability that blue has. But it does have a decent increase in power and toughness. I think, though, I'm going to go ahead and gosh, I want to give it a mid rating, but I just don't think it's quite there. So I'm going to go, it's at the upper part of the low level rating for me. For limited, and I think I'll do the same thing for constructed. For limited, I think you'd be fine having it in your deck, but if you had better options, that you'd take those over this. But yeah, it's still some early threat for your opponents, and it lets you filter through your card selection if you have a card to discard. Constructed, same deal. There's just better options, but could go good in a tribal deck. I could see it, especially with goblin decks. The way you empty your hand so quick, if you end up, so you don't end up getting stuck with extra land, you can rummage those away to draw a card and hopefully get a better draw. Next common is Hammerhand. I believe this is a reprint from M15. This is a pretty cool card. Hammerhand is for 1 red, it's an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. When Hammerhand enters the battlefield, target creature can't block this turn. An enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. That's pretty good. It looks like actually it'd be kind of a weak card at first glance, but actually it's really powerful. The fact that when it enters the battlefield, you can designate a creature can't block this turn, and then you throw it on a creature, maybe that one you just cast or something that you've already got on the battlefield. It can really mess up your opponents, and you can get in some for pretty heavy damage. I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited. I mean, I've seen this card in action in an aggressive limited deck, and it performs really well. So that's why I like it there. I'll give it a low rating for constructed, just due to the fact that it's got so much competition at the one drop spot. I could see it in a commander deck or some kind of brawl deck, but beyond that, really not much. I think it's geared more towards the limited play state, but or I could see it in cube too, something like that. But it's a good card for limited, but has its limits in constructed. Next common is Enthrall to the Pit. For 3 and a red, it's a sorcery. Has a kicker cost of 2 and a black. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. If this creature spell, or if this spell was kicked, sacrifice that creature at the beginning of the next end step. So this is an act of treason basically by itself. If you just cast it by itself, it's just a more expensive act of treason. So that's kind of a bummer. And then if you kick it, you can sacrifice that creature at the beginning of the next end step. It's okay. I think because it costs 1 generic more than a regular act of treason, not counting the kicker cost, that kind of dings it. So I think I'm going to give it a low rating for limited. I could see maybe running one of these in your deck, but nothing beyond that. And so I think that's kind of what knocks it a little bit. But it is kind of cool with the design of it, the fact that it lets you take one of your opponent's creatures and then you can sacrifice it if you pay the kicker cost. That being said, I think it also gets the low rating for constructed. Just, you'd really have to have a specially designed deck, like a sacrifice deck, or something that reduces the cost of instants and sorceries to really capitalize on this spell. Because I just can't see paying 7 total mana to play it in a constructed deck. Next common is Jaya's Firenado. For 4 and a red, it's a sorcery. Jaya's Firenado deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Scry 1. Yeah, it's a slow, clunky removal spell that deals damage to a creature or planeswalker for 5. It's pretty much going to kill anything for the most part. But the fact that it's a sorcery and it costs 5 mana, I'd still run it, but if there are better options, I'd go with those. So I'm gonna give it a low rating for limited, and the same thing for constructed. Just a little too slow for my liking for both formats. Next common is Keldon Strike Team for 2 and a white. I'm sorry, 2 and a red. It's a creature, human warrior, 3/1 power and toughness. Its kicker cost is 1 and a white. When Keldon Strike Team enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. And as long as Keldon Strike Team entered the battlefield this turn, creatures you control have haste. Interesting card. 3/1 for 3, or if you pay the kicker cost, it's 3/1 for and 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens for 5. I think this could be sneaky good. I think I'd give it a shot. I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited. I think it has a lot of potential. It opens up for a lot of possibilities. Not just the tokens that you make from this creature, but also the strike team and any other creature you cast this turn would get haste. So I think that's fairly decent. I'm going to give it a low rating for constructed though, unless you have a specialized deck where you're working with tokens or something like that, or kicker cards that are able to discount the kicker cost or something like that. Probably be a low rating, maybe something in a commander deck, but beyond that, yeah, I think it kind of is stuck at the low end of the spectrum. But I think it definitely has some promise in limited. Next up, you have Lightning Strike. I think the last time we saw this in a standard set was for M19. Solid removal spell, direct damage, kills anything for 3 with 3 toughness or loyalty, or just 3 to the face. Strong card. I'm going to give it a high rating for limited. I really like that, the fact that they brought it back. So the threat of direct damage is there in limited again. So I think it's worthy. It was good back in the day, and I think it's good now. I'm going to give it a high rating for constructed too. Just due to the fact that it does bring back direct damage, and in standard, I think this will see more play, obviously, because of what it does. It can target anything. It's 3 damage for 2 mana. Obviously, in something like Modern or Legacy, you have Lightning Bolt, but this is the next best thing if that's not in the format. So Lightning Strike, solid card, dangerous. Watch out for those. Next up is Maria's Outrider for 4 and a red. It's a creature, elf archer, 4/4 power and toughness with reach. Has domain. When Maria's Outrider enters the battlefield, it deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of basic land types among lands you control. Interesting. This would probably be your curve topper in limited, I think. And if you have access to all 5 basic land types, you could pop your opponent for 5 damage. That's pretty good. And it has reach. You usually don't see reach on red cards too often, so pretty decent. I'll give it a mid rating. I think for the mid level, it's in the middle or low end of that mid level. Just got to make sure you have enough basic land types to pay off the damage that it'll do to your opponents. For constructed, I'll give it a low rating. It's a cool card, but this seems like it's more geared towards limited, draft or sealed. Be happy to take it in limited, but I'd probably pass on it in constructed. Next common is Molten Monstrosity for 7 and a red. Ooh, that's pricey. Creature Hellion with a 5/5 power and toughness. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control, and it has trample. Okay, not so bad. So you're rarely going to be paying 7 plus a red to get it out. So as long as you have a creature on the battlefield. Yeah, it's not bad. It's a big body with trample that you can cast for cheap. Just want to run a lot of creatures in the deck that you're going to be playing this in limited. Interesting card. I think I'm going to give it a mid rating. It's right on that borderline between low and mid. That's probably the best I see it, but the redeeming factor of it is that most of the time you can be able to discount the cost on it, and it's a 5/5 body for trample. So your opponents do need to respect that. For constructed, I'll give it a low rating. There's just so many options in constructed, so this is a card it seems like it's more geared towards limited again. Although once again, I can see it in a brawl deck or a commander deck or something to that sort. So maybe you have a ton of tokens, although your tokens would have to have a pretty high power to really discount this card. So I think that's what I'll do for constructed rating for it. Next common is Smash to Dust for 1 and a red. It's a sorcery. You can choose one. So it's a modular card. Destroy target artifact. Destroy target creature with defender. Smash to Dust deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. So this is probably like a sideboard card in your draft or sealed deck. Bring it in from your sideboard to take out one of your opponent's artifacts, or there's going to be a defender deck type in limited, so you can use this to take those creatures out. Or if your opponents are playing one toughness creatures or tokens, this is good to use against it. So a good sideboard card. I'm going to give it a low rating though, because it has its uses, but it's not something you would start in your main deck. So I'll give it a low rating. Same thing for limited or for constructed. It's very situational. It's definitely has its utility, but just depends on the type of deck you're going to go up against in constructed. It's something I would definitely have in the sideboard if I was to include it in the deck. Next common, looks like it's another reprint, Thrill of Possibility. I believe this card originally debuted in Throne of Eldraine. It's a take on Tormenting Voice. For 1 and a red, it's an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards. Yeah, solid card. I mean, you'll see this in limited, being used in limited and constructed. Give it a mid rating for limited. It definitely have its uses. Just ditch an unneeded land and draw 2 cards mid to late game. Ideal for it. I'm going to do the same thing for constructed. It saw play in constructed. Discarding cards in constructed is sometimes a benefit, so this just is enabler for stuff like that. So, and it's at an instant speed, better than sorcery. So, yeah, mid for both of those. Then we have our next common is Viashino Branch Rider for 1 red. It's a creature, Viashino Warrior, 1/1 power and toughness. It has a kicker cost of 2 and green. It has haste. If Viashino Branch Rider was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it. Pay 2 and a red. Viashino Branch Rider gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Yeah, this could be this is a early and mid game threat against your opponents, and it has haste. So early game, turn 1, drop this, attack for 1, or if you have it on turn 4 or turn 5 or something like that, drop it for its regular cost plus kicker cost, and you're able to attack for 3 with haste. And then later on, you're able to pump it up to give it +2/+0 until end of turn. It has its uses, so I think I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited. Pretty solid. I wouldn't mind taking this in a super aggressive aggro deck for limited. And for constructed, I'll give it a low rating. There are just better 1-drops out there, but still, yeah, you know, it's an actionable card. But constructed, it's hard to score high in that for for cards like these. Who knows? Maybe in a commander deck or something. And I think this might be our last common. It's Yavimaya Steel Crusher for 1 and a red. It's a creature, Ape Warrior, 2/2 power and toughness. It has enlist. And you can also pay 1 and sacrifice Yavimaya Steel Crusher to destroy target artifact. Yeah, that's pretty solid. It's got enlist, so that's useful. And then if your opponent's playing has some artifacts that are causing problems, you can use it against that. So I think I'm going to give it a mid rating, but it's at the low end of the mid rating. I think the main reason it's able to achieve the mid rating for limited is because of its enlist ability. Its sacrifice ability is situational, so it really depends. But yeah, I wouldn't mind taking one of these in draft. I'd main deck it if I'm playing a Boros deck. So we'll just have to see how enlist plays out, but it definitely has its uses other than enlist. So, but it's an interesting card. I'll give it a low rating for constructed, just due to the fact that there's other cards that can be used to get rid of artifacts and enchantments. So, but decent 2-drop, 2-body for limited. Alrighty, on to the uncommons, I believe. Yeah, Balduvian Berserker. 2 and a red. It's a creature, core Berserker, 1/3 power and toughness. It has enlist. When Balduvian Berserker dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. That's actually pretty cool. That's a good use of the enlist ability. Definitely like it. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think your opponents might. Yeah, in certain scenarios, they're going to just want to stay out of the way of this creature. So this is one of the better enlist cards I've seen. I think I'm going to give it a mid rating because of that. Pretty decent. Constructed, I think I'll go low. I still need to see things in action first before I go any higher on that for constructed. At 3 mana for 1/3, there are more efficient creatures you can get for that kind of mana requirement, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe there's a really cool enlist constructed deck that this works in. Next up is Dragon Whelp, one of the original cards for Magic. Dragon Whelp, I believe, was in the first Magic set ever, Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited. It costs 2 and 2 red. Creature, dragon, 2/3 power and toughness with flying. You can pump red into it to have Dragon Whelp get +1/+0 until end of turn. If this ability has been activated 4 or more times this turn, sacrifice it. Sacrifice Dragon Whelp at the beginning of the next end step. So, yeah, it's one of the original cards. It's a decent flyer for what it does. Decent toughness at 4. And then with since it was last around, some of the sacrifice deck types could benefit from its death trigger if you activate the fire breathing 4 or more times. So it's a pretty decent card. I'm going to give it a mid rating for Dragon Whelp. Solid mid-level card, I think. For constructed, I'm going to go low. There was a time when this card might have been featured in a constructed deck in the early days of Magic, but creatures have become far more dynamic since then. So, unless you're playing a tribal dragon deck or something like that in Commander or constructed, stuff for standard or modern or legacy. Outside of that, though, I can't see it being rated much higher than that. Next uncommon is Electrostatic Infantry for 1 and a red, 1/2 power and toughness with trample. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Electrostatic Infantry. This is a pretty cool card. Most of these cards that I've seen that would get the +1/+1 counter based on when you cast an instant or sorcery used to cost 4 mana value, and usually they had a power and toughness as a 2/3. So this one is meant to be used more aggressively. This card could get out of control. I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited, and I'm going to do the same thing for constructed. I could see this being played in both limited and constructed. Definitely in a standard deck. Build around where you've got instants and sorceries, super hyper aggressive aggro style stuff that utilizes combat tricks and direct damage. So I like it. Solid card for both. The fact that it has trample too, it needs to be respected in that sense. So it's a cool design. I'm glad to see they streamlined it a little bit for this card. Next up is Fires of Victory for 1 and a red. It's an instant. Has a kicker cost of 2 and blue. If this spell was kicked, draw a card. Fires of Victory deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of cards in your hand. Interesting. So if you don't kick it, it just deals damage to a creature or planeswalker equal to the number of cards in your hand. So that's kind of tough if this is the only card you have in your hand. It ends up being a dead card and you can't cast the kicker part. If you're able to pay the kicker cost, you'll be able to at least be able to do some damage. So this would, I see this being useful in a control deck, actually. Some kind of mid-range control deck where you're always stuffing cards in your hand. I think for limited, I'm going to give it a low rating in limited. However, for constructed, because it goes in a certain deck type, I will give it a mid rating. It's too situational in that sense for limited, because you don't know when you're going to have cards in your hand because of the variance in limited. For constructed, if you're playing in a Spells Matter deck or a heavy control deck where you're always refilling your hand, this is a pretty good card. I'd probably have one of this card in the deck, but beyond that, that's about it. But yeah, interesting card. Next up is Hurler Cyclops for 3 and 2 red. It's a 5/4 power and toughness. Creature Cyclops. 1 sacrifice another creature. Hurler Cyclops deals 1 damage to any target. It's okay. They've had other creatures that throw things that deal more damage. Usually it's based for the same kind of activated ability or something like that. It deals damage equal to the creature's power that you sacrifice. So this one's actually kind of muted and tamed down because of that. It's got a decent body though, 5/4. It just kind of stinks that 1 damage to any target instead of damage equal to that sacrifice creature's power. So it's kind of disappointing. So I'm going to give it a low rating for limited. It's a card I would have in the deck, but if I could get access to its more efficient cousins, I would use those instead. Same thing for constructed. I'll give it a low rating. If you're playing in a sacrifice death trigger death matters deck, I think it would score a little higher and be more useful, but beyond that, not much. Next uncommon is Hurloon Battle Hymn for 2 and a red. It's an instant. It has a kicker cost of 1 white. Hurloon Battle Rim deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If this spell was kicked, you gain 4 life. Wow, that's pretty cool. It for what you pay for the regular spells cost at 4 damage for 3. That's effective. I like it. Kind of reminds me of the Char spell that originally was in the original Ravnica set. So that's kind of cool. And then the fact that you can kick it, and if you pay the kicker, you gain life. That's pretty cool. That could help you stay alive if you're in a pretty tight game when you're playing. So I'm gonna give this a yeah, this is pretty good. I'm gonna give it a high rating for limited. I think this is gonna be more useful than we realize. And it's 4 damage for 3 mana, or 4 damage for 4 mana, but you also gain 4 life. So that's pretty good. I'll give it a mid rating for constructed, because those cards do have use, and I might have one of those in the deck just to gain life. I could definitely see it in some kind of Boros or Jeskai control deck. So cool card, cool design. Next uncommon is Phoenix Chick for 1 red. It's a creature. It's a Phoenix, 1/1 power and toughness. Has flying and haste. Phoenix Chick can't block. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may pay 2 red. If you do, return Phoenix Chick from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking with a +1/+1 counter on it. This is pretty much just like a recurring shock to the face. If you're able to consistently attack with 3 or more creatures. I could see this in a heavy aggro creature deck or a token deck where you're able to get that 3 or more creature requirement if the card is in the graveyard. The fact that it's flying and haste, it's just going to become an annoying pest for your opponents. So, but the fact that it recurs, that's pretty cool. Just got to be able to have that 3 or more creatures. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to give it a mid rating in limited. And I think I'll do the same for constructed, because you could set up your deck where you're able to have those number of creatures to keep bringing it back from the graveyard. And the fact that it has flying and haste, it's just, it can't block, but it's meant to attack and always attack your opponents every turn. So, and if you're able to get a counter on it, you're just gonna be smacking them for 2 every turn. Your opponents eventually will have to try to kill this card. Next up is Sprouting Goblin for 1 and a red. It's a creature, Goblin Druid. 2/2 power and toughness, has a kicker cost of 1 green. When Sprouting Goblin enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, search your library for a land card with a basic land type. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. You can pay 1 red and tap it, sacrifice a land to draw a card. This card is interesting. It's a good fixer card. And if you have a lot of extra land, you can start sacking those to draw cards. So even if you just cast it for its 1 and a red, you'll get the red, tap, sack, land, draw card. But if you kick it, lets you go search for a land with a basic land type. So in limited, this is kind of cool for the dual lands that are in this, the common dual lands that are in this set, and this will help you get domain a lot easier. In constructed, you could use this with shock lands, the dual lands, any of the non-basic lands that have basic land types. It's going to be solid with. Definitely useful in Commander as well. So pretty cool card. I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited and also for constructed. I think it hits some nice spots for both of those formats. I could see it being used in all those decks. So I like the card. I like the design behind it. Pretty cool. Okay, next uncommon is Twinferno. For 1 and a red, it's an instant. Choose one. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn for the second option. I could definitely see this being used in a Spells Matter deck and having one of these in the deck. And then, you know, let's say you have control of the board, or you're just able to get through with one creature and you're close to killing them off. Giving them double strike to deal double damage is a good way to finish them. So, interesting card. I think I like it better in... Yeah, it's tough to say. Because of its dual uses, you would definitely have to build a limited deck where you have a lot more spells in it. So I'm going to give it a mid rating. I think it's worthy of that. Just because it is versatile. It plays into control cards, but also for aggro cards with the double strike part. So yeah, I'll give it a mid. And I think I'll do the same thing for constructed. Just due to the fact that it is kind of diverse there. So mid rating. Next up is War Host's Frenzy for 2 and a red. It's an instant. It has a kicker cost of black. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. If this spell was kicked, whenever a creature you control dies this turn, draw a card. Interesting. Yeah, I could, yeah, it's an interesting card. Let's see. It's using the card template of the, I think it's Trumpet Blast, if I remember correctly. The red card that just gives your creatures +2/+0 at instant speed for the same cost. But you pin the kicker cost onto it as well, and you drawing cards for any creature that you control that died this turn. Situational. These cards usually don't see that much play that often, so I think it's going to be hard to pull off. I'd at most have one of these in the deck. I think because of that, I'm going to give it a low rating for limited, and I think I'll do the same for constructed. I don't think it'll see much play in constructed. It's built more towards limited, and in limited, it's going to have situational uses. So I think low is where I'd put it. Next uncommon is Yosha Declares War. It has read ahead. So we've had read ahead spells or sagas in the other 3 colors, white, blue, and black. I think this is our first saga for red. So I'll read what read ahead means. It says choose a chapter and start with that many lore counters. Add 1 after your draw step. Skip chapters don't trigger. Sacrifice after 3. So basically, if you read ahead on a saga, and let's say you start in chapter 2, you would put 2 lore counters to start with. That means you skip chapter 1, but you wouldn't have any triggered abilities from chapter 1. So you just it's like starting with chapter 2 as your first chapter. So let's see what it says here. It says create a 0/2 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying named Ornithopter. Chapter 2 says tap any number of untapped artifacts you control. When you do this, Yosha Declares War, deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker. And then chapter 3 is up to 1 target artifact you control becomes a creature with base power and toughness 4/4 until end of turn. Interesting. It gives you an O2 Ornithopter flying, and you can tap any number of artifacts to have it deal damage, and that damage is to a creature or planeswalker, and then that artifact becomes 4/4. Yeah, I like it. I think for 2, I'd play it in limited. I'm going to give it a mid rating, and I think it'll find its uses in constructed. I'd probably give it a low end, mid level rating for that in constructed. Just a mid card, but in an artifact specific deck, this could be powerful. So pretty decent. Definitely could see it being used in a commander deck. So we're on to rares now. Our first rare is Chaotic Transformation for 5 and a red. It's a sorcery. Exile up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target creature, up to 1 target enchantment, up to 1 target planeswalker, and or up to 1 target land. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a card that shares a card type with it, and puts that card onto the battlefield, then shuffles. Yeah, this is a card I could definitely see being played in Commander, for sure. It's going to be tougher to pull off in limited, but it's situational. The good thing is it's when you exile them, you can do up to, so it's not a requirement. I think you just have to have a decent payoff in limited to make it work. So I think I'll give it a mid rating for limited. This could be a total whiff and flame out and be not very good, all the way to being a total bomb. So I think mid is a safe grade for it. At the very worst, I think if you were to cast this spell, you might say you get a 4-drop or something like that, and you're put into play. But if you're able to build around it in limited, that'd be pretty cool. Same thing for constructed. I see this being used more in Commander, and just a way to get out some amazing cards in Commander. Maybe we could set up what comes out of the deck and just totally overwhelm your opponent. So interesting card. I really like the flavor behind it. It'd be kind of cool to see this go off and see what people are able to do with it. Next rare for red is Defiler of Instinct, or 2 and 2 red. So this is the red Defiler of the Defiler series. It's a creature, Phyrexian Kavu, 4/4, has first strike. That's strong. Has an additional cost to cast red permanent spells. You may pay 2 life. Those spells cost 1 red less to cast if you pay life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of red mana you pay. Whenever you cast a red permanent spell, Defiler of Instinct deals 1 damage to any target. Yeah, that's pretty strong. That's solid. It's a vicious creature with first strike, 4/4. When you're casting red spells, you're dealing a point of damage to any target. In a mono red deck, this could just be a finisher, or just pinging stuff off the battlefield as you're attacking your opponent. So gonna give it a high rating for limited, and I'm gonna do the same thing for constructed. I know that this will compete for some spots in some standard decks, and who knows, maybe some Pioneer, definitely in some commander decks as well. So yeah, pretty solid. I like it at the high rating for both limited and constructed. Okay, next up is Keldon Flamesage. For 2 and a red, creature, human shaman. It's 2/3 with enlist. Whenever Keldon Flamesage attacks, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is Keldon Flamesage's power. You may exile an instant or sorcery card with mana value X or less from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Interesting card. Instant and sorcery. Don't know if it's pretty interesting. Looks like you can cast it. So yeah, I don't think the timing rules would be in effect for it. So you could probably be able to cast a sorcery with that. We'll have to look up on that and see. Interesting card. The bigger its power, or the bigger its power and toughness, or bigger its power, the higher the mana value for the spell you'd be able to cast. So useful card. I think I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited. It has enlist, but in order for you to be able to get its triggered ability, you have to attack with it. So it's hard to say how that's going to play out. So I'll go mid for both limited and constructed. This is a card that really want to see in play, see how it works, but could be pretty powerful if you play it right and have the right build around for it. So could be a bomb actually, but we'll have to see. Something to revisit later. Next up is Radha's Firebrand for 1 and a red. It's a creature, human warrior, 3/1 power and toughness. Whenever Radha's Firebrand attacks, target creature defending player controls with power less than Radha's Firebrand's power can't block this turn. That's pretty good. Domain for 5 and a red. Radha's Firebrand gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each basic land type among lands you control. Activate only once each turn. So yeah, it has Domain. If you've got all basic land types, you're just going to be paying 1 red for it to activate. And if you're able to attack with it with a 5 power, anything with power less than that can't block. So that's going to be pretty good. Reminds me of there's a card from Hour of Devastation that was like that too. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it had Eternalize, and whenever it entered the battlefield, it kept creatures from blocking. So yeah, it's a pretty strong card. I like it. I'm going to give it a high rating for limited, and I think I'm going to do the same thing for constructed. I think it's going to see both limited and constructed play. With the domain ability too, that can be pretty strong with it. The only downside of it is its toughness is a 1 toughness, so it could be pinged off the board, but I think I could still see it being used in an aggressive deck. So we'll go high rating for both of those. Next rare is Rundvelt Hordemaster for 1 and a red. It's a creature, goblin warrior, 1/1 power and toughness. Other goblins you control get +1/+1. So this is the Goblin Lord for the set. Whenever Rundvelt Hordemaster or another goblin you control dies, exile the top card of your library. If it's a goblin creature card, you may cast that card until the end of your next turn. Yeah, that's pretty good. So in a goblin tribal deck or goblin heavy deck, this is going to be a solid card to use. Don't know how many goblins there are going to be available to you when you're playing in limited. So I think for limited, I'm going to give it a mid rating. You really got to be drafting heavy goblins to make this work in limited, though. That's why I think that at most I want to give it a high or a limited rating. For constructed, I'll give it a high rating for goblins. I mean, you're not going to be playing this in anything other than a goblin deck, so having it in the goblin deck, it's going to do its work, and you're going to be able to cast spells and stuff like that, or cast goblin creature cards, sorry. So it kind of feeds the goblin horde, if you will. As you run out, things die, they're replaced by the horde master. So in a goblin deck, I'll give it a high rating for constructed. I could see it having a lot of use in standard commander or any kind of tribal eternal deck. So next up we have Squee Dubious Monarch, 2 and a red, legendary creature Goblin Noble for 2/2 power and toughness with haste. Whenever Squee Dubious Monarch attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. You may cast Squee Dubious Monarch from your graveyard by paying 3 and a red and exiling 4 other cards from your graveyard rather than paying its mana cost. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's gonna be most powerful in a goblin deck. But the fact that you're able to continuously attack with it and create goblin tokens, and if it dies, so what? You can bring it back from your graveyard. So I'm gonna give it a mid rating in limited. I think you're gonna eventually run out of cards. Really want to see it in play to really have a good idea how that's going to work. However, I will give it a higher rating in constructed, just due to the fact that you can build a deck around this using cards that feed Squee, and also it plays well with attack triggers and getting those goblin tokens on the battlefield. You throw a couple goblin lords in with it and it can be pretty strong. So I like it in a goblin constructed deck, or just a aggro attack trigger deck. Give it a high rating. Limited, we'll go mid, and to be determined on how it plays out. I could be wrong, but I feel comfortable giving it mid for now. Next rare is Temporal Firestorm for 3 and 2 red. It's a sorcery. Kicker for 1 and a white and or 1 and a blue. Choose up to X creatures and or planeswalkers you control, where X is the number of times the spell was kicked. Those permanents phase out. Temporal Firestorm deals 5 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. So it's kind of cool. It gives you a kicker options to save 1 or 2 creatures and or planeswalkers and phase them away as the Firestorm rolls through and just kills everything and burns them to a crisp. It's a interesting take on a board wipe. I'm going to give it a high rating though, because just the fact that it is pretty effective just by itself. But if you're able to use the kicker spells or kicker costs, it's even better. Same thing for constructed. You just got to hit that. Well, you have to hit 9 mana to get the full effect for it. But just by itself, it's still a decent board wipe. But just play a lot of mana in the deck, and you should be able to pull off the 9 mana total mana value and get full value for this card. Cool card though. Next rare is the Elder Dragon War. It has read ahead, 2 and 2 red saga. The Elder Dragon War deals 2 damage to each creature and each opponent for Chapter 1. Chapter 2, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Chapter 3, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. Interesting, yeah. So it's kind of a low-level board wipe. For Chapter 1, lets you cycle through your cards. For Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, you get a 3/3 red dragon creature token with flying. I like it. Give it a high rating for limited. I think it'll find its uses. It'll definitely be played. Same thing for constructed. I think you can, in a control deck, this will work, and lets you cycle through your lands. Then you get that token. I mean, a 4/4 flying red dragon is nothing to laugh at. If it goes unchecked, it's going to kill you. So I think it works. I like it. I could even see it being brought in from a sideboard to take on and take out weenie aggro decks that are low to the ground creatures. So we're on to Mythics. Jaya Fiery Negotiator is the first Mythic we have. She's cost 2 and 2 red, legendary planeswalker Jaya with 4 loyalty to start. You can +1 her to create a 1/1 red monk creature token with prowess. You can -1 her to exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them. You may play that card this turn. You can -2 her to choose target creature and opponent controls. Whenever you attack this turn, Jaya Fiery Negotiator deals damage equal to the number of attacking creatures to that creature. Interesting, that's a cool ability. And then the last one is the ultimate, which is a -8. You get an emblem with whenever you cast a red instant or sorcery spell, copy it twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. That text gets pretty small on when the card's reduced in size, so had to focus closely there. Yeah, she seems pretty solid. I like her. I'm going to give her a high rating in limited. And the fact that you're attacking with a decent attack force, and she'll just blow things off the board in advance of the oncoming creatures that you have when you're attacking. I think I'll do high for constructed as well. She's pretty decent. She might be worthy of an epic rating, but I kind of need to see her in play and see how she plays out before I do that. I feel comfortable with high, at least for both of them, but I might regret going this low, and maybe she'll visit me and just singe me alive and say, epic, I'm epic. So, I don't know, we'll see. So, good planeswalker though. She's solid. I believe this is the last card for red, our last mythic. Shivan Devastator for X and a red. Creature, Dragon, Hydra, 0/0, has flying and haste. Shivan Devastator enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. Yeah, this is pretty much a direct damage on a stick. It is a bomb that I would give for both limited and constructed. epic rating for sure. The fact that you're able to just exit out and your opponents must have an answer for it right away, or they are going to take some serious damage to the face. Flying in haste, just smash away. And if you're able to continuously attack with it and increase the power and toughness on it, it's just going to become more of a problem for your opponent. So this oftentimes, though, is going to be the finisher. So it's an excellent use of the X spell. So I like it. The only thing that it is susceptible to is spells that destroy things with mana value of less than so-and-so, like 3 or less, 2 or less, 1 or less. Since converted mana cost is 1, it's going to be susceptible to that. But other than that, if they don't have that kind of answer, you're going to smash them pretty good with it. So really cool card, epic, worthy of the epic rating. So, but we've come to the conclusion of the red cards. Next up, we'll be tackling green. That'll be fun. Lots of big creatures, I'm sure. So I'll have that up soon. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I hope you're enjoying the series, and we'll see you next time for the green chapter.